What more could you want in life than to have had some good laughs with good people? And it just stopped me in my tracks. I'm like, yeah, what more could you want? Like, I have bright neon yellow nails because it matches the book, because it makes me happy. I just
Yeah,
like it. If a client didn't like it, I'd be like, oh, well, like
yeah.
then the polish on my nails has nothing to do with the quality of my thought.
When I leave, I don't want someone to go, man, you know, all I can remember is what he was wearing. Like, I want it to be like, oh no, that was a helpful conversation.
So, joy, comfort, function. For any one individual, I would say try pushing 10 to 20% outside your comfort zone or outside the comfort zone of your work culture and see if anything bad happens. For whatever's important, use your calendar for good and get there before work can get there. It's the better hack and better than having a midlife crisis.
Hi, this is Andy. When I ask people what they want from work, I hear some familiar answers, something like meaning or the opportunity to learn or make an impact. Often I hear something about flexibility and certainly income, but how often do you hear someone say this? I want to optimize for good laughs with good people. That's just one of the many refreshing, perspective shifting ideas in Bree Groff's new book, Today Was Fun, a book about work. Seriously. Bree is a transformation expert, consultant, and speaker who believes that work doesn't have to be painful to be productive. In a world that often confuses busyness with brilliance or looking professional with being valuable, she offers an inspiring and joyful alternative. In today's conversation, we'll talk about what she's learned from watching her parents love their work, why Sunday scaries and burnout have become so normalized, and how performative professionalism is holding us back. You'll hear about practical rituals such as team user manuals and daily check ins that build psychological safety and trust. And you'll learn what it means to build cozy teams. I wonder what that is. That doesn't, that we just don't survive, but actually enjoy the work. This is an episode for anyone who's ever asked, is it possible to do meaningful work and actually have fun doing it? I think you'll find Bree's answer refreshing and actionable. I can't wait to share this discussion with you. Hey, quick note. If you or someone you know is thinking about getting PMP certified, we put together a super helpful guide called The 5 Best Resources to Help You Pass the PMP on Your First Try. We've helped thousands of people earn their certification. We'd love to help you too. It's totally free and it's a great way to get a head start. Just go to 5bestresources.peopleandprojectspodcast.com to grab your copy. Again, that's 5bestresources.peopleandprojectspodcast.com. Let's make this the year you get your PMP. Let's jump into our discussion with Bree about her book, Today Was Fun. Hey, Bree, thanks for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
I've really been looking forward to this. It's such a unique book, and we're going to get into it. But before we get into it, I'd love for our listeners to learn more about your backstory, because it's actually pretty cool. So I don't know too many people who grew up looking at their parents and saying they were having fun or they considered their work fun. A lot of times it was like, they didn't really like their job or they didn't talk about their job much. So tell us more about that, especially how it shaped your view of work.
Yeah. So growing up, my parents were both educators. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. My dad was an elementary school principal. When my mom would come home from work, she would frequently say the same phrase. She would say, "I have the best days."
Mhm.
And growing up, I was like, "Cool, mom." you know,
Right.
like,
Yeah, whatever.
you just sort of grow up thinking I don't know what these adults do every day, but
Right, yeah.
in some ways I took it for granted that she was having so much fun, but she was born to be a kindergarten teacher.
Mm,
She loved her students so much. She was phenomenal. I actually still get messages from some of her students
how
about
sweet.
how much they affected her life. And this wasn't even like she taught high school, right? And you had an
Right.
adult sort of conversation.
Right.
No, this is like a kindergarten teacher having that sort of impact on your life. So seeing her love her days, it just instilled in me that it was normal to
Mm,
go to work and come home and have that be a good way to spend a day.
mm.
Similarly, my dad, now he had more stress because he
Mhm.
was a principal, he had, like, the
Yeah.
board of education stuff to do, so I wanna diminish that or at all, like, the difficulty of being an educator. But I remember I would go into work with him, every once in a while, and to see him laugh with his colleagues, like, they looked like old friends. And, like, I even say they were friends because after he retired, they would still all the retirees would plan this monthly lunch for Portage Park retirees to get together. I remember he'd go on these fishing trips with the building engineer. Like, he just looked like he was around people he liked, which is weird that was weird, I think,
Right.
right? And so I
Yeah.
grew up thinking work is a place to have fun. And actually, my first career was in teaching. I taught seventh grade math and high school math and physics. And I very much experienced that feeling of like, I hope they don't realize I do this job for free.
Mhm.
I mean, I had to pay my bills, but I genuinely felt like I'm having fun. Like this
Yeah.
is giving something to me, not taking from me. And it was really only when I made my way into consulting and saw that, like, nobody was eating lunch on time, people were in back-to-back meetings all day, that I was like, "Oh, right." Like, I guess I, like, knew that other people work differently, right? But to
Mhm.
experience what it was like to feel this always on kind of stress, that was new. And it was new because I grew up feeling like work's fun.
Yeah.
You
I mean, what a great way to grow up. I'm thinking of somebody I know really well, and I don't know if he listens, so I'm not going to call him out by name, but he was in a situation where he hated his job. I mean, hated his job, but it's one of those things. If I just hold on for 8 more years, I'll be vested in my
Mm.
pension and all this other stuff. And eventually you learn how short life is, right? I mean, you just
Yes.
lost your mom not too long ago, right?
Yes,
And
yeah.
so it's one of those things, and you're holding on to your dad. My dad recently died about the same time, actually, your mom
Oh,
did,
I'm
and
sorry, yeah.
but you know what it's like. It's one of those things where life is so precious and short, and yet so many people tolerate this stuff. So, what are some aspects of work and life that you have found many people we just start to perceive as just being normal, entirely normal?
Yeah. I mean, there are so many quirks about our day, so I'll
Yeah.
rattle some off,
Mhm.
that are not normal, but seem normal. So, like, for example, waking up, rolling over, checking your email, Slack messages before you even roll over to see if whatever partner's in bed next to you, like, if they're
Yeah.
awake or before saying good morning,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
We're like, "Oh, what came in the middle of the night?" We're scrolling. Another one, not having time to eat or pee
Mhm.
during the
Right.
day, like,
Right.
this is weird for
Yeah.
humans. This is
Yeah.
actually a weird thing.
Mhm.
Uh, Not having time, like, putting off doctor's appointments, exercising, like, this is categorically bad for us, and yet I know I've been in that sort of overwork cycle and know sometimes it's like, I'm just too zonked. I can't do that, or like this meeting is coming up with a client, the doctor's appointment will have to wait, or a million other things too, right? Like downing caffeine just to keep ourselves going,
Mhm.
empty calories, whatever snacks are in the office.
Right.
This sort of infinite workday lifestyle, which was this term coined by Microsoft recently, and their data showing that evening and weekend meetings are up year over year, and the average knowledge worker is interrupted every 2 minutes by a message or meeting or email. It's just this sort of like harried lifestyle where you're always a little bit on edge. And somehow that's just become like, oh, that's just what work is.
Yeah.
When I'm sort of 2 minds of it. Like, it's sometimes you just need the job and right? And so then if that's the case, I gotta stay in this job, then there's ways to make that better. But there's also times when we don't leave jobs and we should. There are times when we can sizably change the structure or the quality of our days, and we don't because we just assume this is how it's supposed to be. So, what I'm hoping to do is to denormalize that
Yeah.
kind of like always on lifestyle that's really it's not healthy for us and it's also like not great for the business
Yeah.
either.
Ultimately, yeah, you can't read your book without realizing that is lose lose or win win, right? Depending on how you look at that. I don't think any of the parents listening would go, but my kids are a distraction. But sometimes it feels like sometimes the implication is now normal of like, well, I just don't have time for that, or I got to get to Friday, or
Yes.
burnout is kind of like, well, we all, it's almost like this accepted, when did you burn out? Right?
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like the assumption that the only people who have any sense of peace or perspective, like, had the health scare or had the
Right.
crisis.
Mhm.
I'm hoping people like
Mhm.
skip the crisis and just go to
Right.
the healthy lifestyle
Yeah.
because otherwise, you're right. I write about in the book this time when I was reading a bedtime story to my daughter Arden. She was little at like 4 years old, and I'm turning 2 pages at a time
Mm.
because I'm like, I got to get back to work. I know there's a message like burning a hole in my pocket.
Right.
Like she doesn't really know the story. Like
Right.
I'm right, like just
The
like
end.
right. Oh, okay, look at that. That went
Yeah.
fast. And she yelled at me. She said, "You're
Mm.
not doing your best.
Mm.
You turned an
Yeah.
extra page."
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, like, "Oh, I'm not doing I'm doing my best, but not for you. I'm doing my best for the client and the company. And the rest of my life just got work's leftovers." And so that was a real moment of like, this is not okay with me. That I'm not doing this anymore. I'm reading every stupid page of every single story because it matters. And I need to defend that time.
Okay, since you shared a mommy moment, I'll share a daddy moment that's related to that.
Please.
I don't think it's a violation of the fast food rule here, okay, but tell me. But I, we went from teenagers to kindergartners, like I told you before we
Right,
started
right.
recording, teenagers to diapers, actually. And teenagers don't need to be tucked in at night.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of creepy, right? But so every once in a while, I'd be checking my phone while I'm trying to tuck in the little ones. They were probably like 4 or 5 at the time. And at one point, my now almost 16-year-old daughter said, but she was only like 4 or 5, but she goes, "Daddy, could you put your phone away?"
Oh,
And it's like, it's like that. You're
straight
not
shot to
reading
the
this
heart.
right? But the thing that made me realize, if Arden at that time picked up on what you're doing, and if my 5-year-old picked up on what I do, the 45-year-olds we're working with are picking up on what we're doing. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're not as clever as we think we are at kind of hiding this stuff. So, uh,
No, for sure. I mean, even actually in TMI of my marriage, like when I'm trying to tell Brad something and he's sort of half looking at his phone,
right.
I'm like, "You're not paying attention to me."
Yes, I am.
I know.
Yeah,
Like, look
yeah.
me in the eyes.
Yeah. Right. I know it. I
Oh,
know it. Yeah. You say something in the book. I alluded to it during the intro that I've truly never heard anybody say that you're not optimizing for income or growth or even meaning. You're optimizing for good laughs with good people. Full stop is how you say it in the book. So
mhm.
I'm curious, how'd you come to that conclusion? And then what's kind of changed in work and life, let's say, since you made that shift?
Yeah, I decided to be unapologetic about it. Like I mean, you read so many like business articles, even like well-meaning ones that are like purpose at the center. And I don't
Right.
technically dislike purpose. I think that's a
Mhm.
great thing or I want to use my skills or create impact. So, some data and then a story. The data is there's so much research done on what contributes to human happiness. Like the longitudinal studies of human happiness, they're super clear. It's just the quality of our relationships.
Mm.
That's it, right? And then you hear those and you're like, well, duh. Yeah, like, sure. Yeah, that makes total sense.
I'll
But
have
for,
time for that when I retire. Right.
right. Yeah, I'll like, yeah, talk to you then. So it's both obvious, but then we have this like sort of capitalist mental block against it, I find, when it comes to work. Like when it comes to work, the people I'm working with, like the relationships are not the priority. The priority is the business impact. And my colleagues are sort of fellow bots or something, we're like trying to get it done together.
Resources.
Resources, fellow resources, which I think is just one of the reasons, frankly, why we feel so burnt out. The phrase good laughs with good people. Now, the story. I did have a moment where this sort of woke me up. I was visiting my mom in this rehab facility after she'd had this ankle surgery. And for all of the patients there, they had brought in this singer who was doing old Sinatra classics. So we like went and sat and listened. And And mind you, like the room is like average age here is probably like 75, 80 or so.
She was
So
the young one. You said
she
in the
was the
book.
young one in the group. Yeah. But just to like set the scene for the perspective in the room. Like these are people who have like been through some life. And at the end of the set, the singer says, "What more could you want in life than to have had some good laughs with good people?" And it just stopped me in my tracks. I'm like, yeah, what more could you want? And I look around, everybody's nodding,
Mm,
everybody's smiling as if this is like beautiful and profound, but also like totally the truth. And I'm just like, this is not what I'm optimizing for. Like, I'm playing the game. I'm optimizing for the KPIs and
right.
my salary and even more like human things. Like I'm optimizing for my skill growth and the purpose of my work. And I thought to myself, if what makes us happy in life is the quality of our relationships, why do I feel so afraid to name that? And if I'm going to be spending more time with colleagues than I am with my family most days, I want to like them. Like it all of a sudden became very uncomplicated. I want to
Yeah.
like the people I spend my days with, and I want to be laughing with them too. So this is my new philosophy, and I realize it's very like unbusiness in a sense, but also that doesn't worry me because I know the externality, like the consequence of liking the people that you work with, enjoying the time you spend with them, like really deeply respecting them, finding them inspiring and funny. The impact of that is you actually just do better work then. Like it's not at all a slight to the business or the project or the
Yeah.
client. It's actually a driver of psychological safety, which is well studied as a driver of team performance. So I've decided, well, I don't care. This is what I think. I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to put it in the book.
Yeah. What I love about it is by because it's not an either or, right? By
Right.
optimizing for the relationships, it actually, you end up growing and you probably do better work, which leads to better income. Like you get some of the other stuff. But if
Yeah.
you optimize for the other stuff, it could be at the cost of the relationships,
Exactly.
right? I mean, so that's where you miss out.
Totally. Right. It's very, very easy to like, yeah, there's some like logic theorem, right? Like A
Mhm,
drives B, B does not drive A.
mhm, mhm.
It's super easy to optimize for impact and salary and all those things and not have the friendships. And
Right.
in fact, that's sort of my beef with the word purpose or meaning, which at a literal level, I think is great. It's great to feel like your work matters. But I think when we hold up purpose or meaning as the ultimate aim, what that can sometimes do is take us away from the quality of our working days because it's really easy to create impact and not like the people that you work with. If you want to burn yourself out and work all, So, yeah, so
Yeah.
I love that it's something that I truly believe and I hope other people believe too because I want them to have long-term happiness.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and we just don't have to be worried about the repercussions. They're all good.
What I love about it, Bree, is I mean, everybody gets to make their choices, right? And maybe they feel like this is my calling and to do it. But I also feel like sometimes people feel just locked in and to be exposed to there is another way, there
Yeah.
is another way. And it's so provocatively in your face. Good laughs and good people. It seems like, well, but Bree, no day can, you can't always have that every day. But isn't your motto is like, what is it? Most things, most days, right? It's
Exactly.
like, it's not maybe every day is not going to be exactly like that, but most days, right? That's what
Yeah.
you're trying to go. Yeah.
For
Mhm.
sure. Yeah, just most days. Like
Yeah.
some work isn't not fun.
Yeah.
Like I get that.
Yeah.
It's only really a problem when it's the reverse. Most days you're not having fun.
Yeah.
Most days you don't like the people that you're around.
Mhm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
even go so as far as far to include this Norwegian phrase in the book. It's a response to the question, "How are you?" And the Norwegian response is, I'm going to butcher it, but it's oppe ag ikke grater, which means up and not crying. Like, you know, and I love it because it's like, yeah, some days are real rough. Are you up? Are you not crying? Like, you did it. Totally fine. And I just find it takes the pressure off because the last thing I think anybody needs is like, oh, I need to be having fun at all times. I'm not having fun. I'm doing something wrong, which I
Yeah.
also think is like what's in, some ways dangerous about the bar of like purpose or calling, is if I don't feel that way about my work, have I done something wrong? I was like, no. Are you having good days most days?
Right.
Great. You win.
Yeah. Years ago, someone told me they went to an executive presence workshop at their is a financial services company.
Mm.
And I'm just curious on the topic because I hear customers often say, my people don't have presence. And so I'm like, all right, so what did you cover in this class? And they go, well, first of all, they talked about the importance of which watch do you
Oh
wear?
my God.
I'm like, are you serious? Like, that's what they talked about? And
Oh.
she, I mean, they said more, but it was all just as superficial, like how to get gristle out of your when you're eating with people, like how do you do this politely? And I'm just thinking, it came to mind when I read your discussion in the book about how much work is performative, that
Yeah.
someone's watch is just business costume, which I thought was an interesting way you said it. So
Yeah.
I've never been perfectly happy, Bree, with some advice regarding this. Cause like sometimes people say, dress like your boss or dress
Right.
like the position you want. I'm just curious because I mean, Arden's going to hit the workplace someday.
Hmm.
I'm sure you have other aspiring. I think it's actually more difficult for women, I think personally, than
Yeah.
it is for
Uh-huh.
men. But regardless, if someone came to you for advice, trying to figure out how do I show up authentically in this culture, in their specifically work culture, how might you respond?
Yeah. So the cultures will be different. And so at first
Right.
I acknowledge this, right? Like I'm not trying to get anybody fired. If when I'm invited to a wedding, I don't show up in sweatpants. Like so there's some like context.
Mhm.
But I firmly believe this sort of performative professionalism, wear the nice watch, it's damaging
Mhm.
because it's damaging to the human who feels like I have to be palatable. Which, if you even think about that term, is such a gross term. It's like,
Yeah.
what, you're gonna eat me up and I wanna
Right.
taste nice? Like,
Right. Right.
it's
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
terrible.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But I understand, and I have worn many slacks in my day. Like, I
Mhm.
understand the urge to be seen as professional via my appearance. And yet, not only is it bad for a sense of inclusion or belonging, because now I'm like, "Oh, I have to be this version of myself for you to like me." It's also bad for the business now because now I'm really self stifling
Mhm.
because I'm trying to say the right thing or the smart thing. I'm not giving the best of my ideas. So how do we push back about like how do we like sort of get out of these button up shirts?
Mhm.
So the way I think about dressing, I think about dressing for joy, comfort, and function. So joy is just like what makes me happy. If you're not seeing the video of this, like I have bright neon yellow nails because it matches the book because it makes me happy. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like it. If a client didn't like it, I'd be like, oh, well, like then the polish on my nails has nothing to do with the quality of my thought. So joy, comfort, there's a whole chapter about stretchy pants at work.
Right.
I think of it in the same way as doctors wear scrubs. Like scrubs are comfortable and functional because they are sanitary, they can be sanitized, and you can move in them, right? And so
Right.
surgeons' brains work perfectly in them. Like I would never want my surgeon to be in a suit and tie because somehow that made him look more professional or her for that matter. Look at my linguistic biases. But so joy, comfort, function for any one individual, I would say try pushing 10 to 20% outside your comfort zone or outside the comfort zone of your work culture and
Yeah.
see if anything bad happens.
Yeah.
Like it's the spoilers, it's not going to. If you work in finance, this could be like wear a fun sock with a little flamingo print. Or I used to work with somebody who would wear these like they were really nice loafers, but they had a fuzzy lining, like it looked like fur. And but if you look closely, you could see all the fur. Like they were more like slippers than
Mhm.
loafers, which was fun. But also like see if you can push it a little further. Just like sometimes I would show up in my exercise clothes because I'm like, look, I'm going to go exercise after. Now,
Yeah.
I wouldn't do this at a first client meeting, but I might do it on the third client meeting after I've built a little bit of trust. So it's a little bit of a dance of understanding the context that you're in and then seeing if you can push it 20% for the benefit of you feeling more like you in your own skin.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, like, there's no bottom line that's improved via zippers or ties. Like, it
Right.
just really matters 0. And So you just push it a little bit. You try a little mischief,
Yeah.
and um, and then usually nothing bad happens, and you're like, oh, I could have been doing this the whole time.
Yeah. I forget the name of the author, but it was a book on branding or products and marketing and stuff like that. But he goes, he called it Maya, most advanced yet acceptable. He's like,
Yes.
push, push, but it's still acceptable, right? Because if you go too far with the product, then people don't know what it is, they don't understand it. But what's acceptable? And that came to mind when I was reading this. Like what like you had the Fiona Harvey quote, I think in the book,
Yes,
was it about
exactly.
what makes you feel joyous, or what is it? Or some people just
Yeah.
feel better when they're wearing that. They've like I in fact I've even heard surgeons will often dress to the nines, whatever that means. They're like walking in and then they change into their scrubs because it's like, you know, and so I'm guessing no one sees them walk in. It's just part of, hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to work today. So
Yeah.
I guess the one thing I think you said, it was learning the difference between being professional and looking professional. Because if our
Right.
focus is just on looking professional, that's pretty shallow, really, right? It was a book on executive presence years ago. And her advice was in this being professional versus looking professional, her advice was just don't let your dress, however you show up, distract from your professional competencies.
Mm.
And so I thought that was interesting. So when you said you could show up in your workout clothes, maybe on the third meeting, and that's not a hard and fast third meeting, but the fact is you had already established your professional competencies. It's not taking away from anything. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting way of looking at it. Like when I leave, I don't want someone to go, man, you know, all I can remember is what he was wearing. Like I want it to be like, oh no, that was a helpful conversation. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I see that. And like when in doubt, a lot of times I'll just I'll go to my work uniform.
Yeah.
So all my colleagues would know I had this one shirt that I called my client shirt. It
Yeah.
was just like a black sleeveless mock neck. It was just
Yeah.
very plain. And they call it my client shirt because when I was like, I won't wear my extras. I guess I'll like a little bit dress up. I'd wear that one shirt. But I would
Actually,
even like,
your biopic is that shirt.
yeah, well, now I've got a few. Yes. So my
I
like
think.
original biopic, yes, is my client shirt.
I think so. Yeah.
Because I can't be bothered to like
Right.
put together an outfit. I'm like, you get
Decisions.
this black turtleneck. That's what you get.
Right.
Very Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I would even go a step further of like sometimes I find even there are times when I remember somebody's dress
Mhm.
because it's a little outside the norm.
Mhm.
But if they are showing up as a really authentic version of themselves,
Yeah.
to me that feels magnetic. Because what starts going through my head is how can I be that free?
I like it.
Like I want to have the confidence to show up that way. Or like a lot so it's ironic I think in consulting, usually the more senior a leader, a more senior a consultant is, the
Yeah.
more they'll wear t-shirts. It's actually the more junior folks who show up, because they're trying to like
Right.
compensate in some way. And I get it. Like I do understand it. But also I like this trend that the more confident you feel in your competence, the
Yeah.
less you feel like you need to perform it.
I like it.
And there's some interesting research around jargon too, that when more junior people are using jargon, it actually sounds like it's compensating in a way. Like it actually looks like you're putting on a show when you don't mean to be. So, yeah. So I like that advice. Like, hopefully your clothes aren't distracting. At best, they make
Mhm.
you happy. They, there's a quote in the book from the New York Times chief fashion critic who her quote is, I like women who dress as if they're comfortable telegraphing who they are to the world, which is ultimately the ultimate grown up way to dress.
Yeah.
And yeah, so at best you can be yourself. And like, if you need to like nudge people along by throwing on a blazer once in a while, so be it.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. I wonder if you get this sort of pushback at Aubrey of like, well, you're in the agency world, or you're the, like, of course this all works for you, but that's not the business I'm in. So I guess here's my question: are some professions more amenable to fun at work than others?
I see the point, and I think no. I mean, no is the answer.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I mean, I see the like. Calvin Klein was a longtime client, and they're out there taking pictures of models in their underwear, and you might be like, "That sounds," like they're out in these glamorous like beaches but they still had stress too. So it's not always the content of the work, or you might think, right, like the designer, the innovation person is having more fun than the accountant. But I have a few rebuttals to that. One is The Office, the show The Office, right? Like, it was such a brilliant choice to have them in paper sales, which is like conceivably the dullest
Right.
profession ever, with no offense to anybody listening in paper sales. But that was the point. The point
Mm,
was that you don't need to have purpose and meaning and like a classically fun job in order to make fun for yourself and with your colleagues. The other story I often tell is about the author and former Johns Hopkins surgeon Peter Attia. He wrote the book Outlive, and he had told this story about when he was a surgeon and like doing 10 surgeries a day. You would think in the operating room that's the most serious of all workplaces, right? Like no screwing
scalpel.
around here, right? Scalpel. But he would tell the story about how they would listen to clips of Napoleon Dynamite on repeat, which,
Yeah.
if you don't know, is like this, I think, 2004 super quirky oddball film. And if you share that sense of humor, that's like, oh, you're into it. And he would say, people would ask him, like, you did what? Like, I don't know. I'd want my surgeon doing that. Like, did it affect the outcomes? And he said, no, actually, within a period of 3 days, they did 13 kidney transplants, and all of them were exceptional outcomes. So I use that story to say, like, look, if when somebody's life is on the line, the surgeons are laughing, then you can laugh in a budget meeting. And
Yeah.
I'd even go further to say, it wasn't that they did a good job despite the fact that they were laughing. I would say it's likely they did a good job because they were laughing, because you can imagine their cortisol levels are lower. They're not like dreading the time passing, right? They're on their feet for so long. They're actually energized by that sort of work environment. So no, I'd say like no matter what your job is, there's always an opportunity for fun, right? Like you're a barista, there's latte art. You're an accountant, like color code the crap out of your spreadsheets, in a way that's delightful. There's always something. And if there's nothing about the work, then there's always the people.
Yeah. Something that just inspired me was a family friend who she worked for. It was the equivalent of the Department of Children and Family Services in Illinois. And difficult, difficult
Yes.
cases,
Yeah,
like every day,
I'm sure.
dysfunction, they were swimming in an ocean of dysfunction, but they made the decision on our team, we're going to have fun.
Hmm.
And you remember how you talk about in the book about decorating your work area, like personalize it,
Yeah.
make it fun. They would do some team meetings and the way they handled the meeting, they made it fun. And I'm going to tell you the good part about it and then the sad part about it. But the
Yeah.
good part about it is you don't have, if somebody's listening to us and they don't have the culture at the top level, what can we do for our level? Like, what can we do to
Yes.
create it in our team? And I think that's where your book is just so brilliant of control what you can control. Can you make this true for your part of the organization, even if you can't change that? The
Yeah.
part that I even hate to share on this part, Bree, is, but I think it's important to say, they actually got in trouble. You're having too much fun. And so at that
Yeah.
point, she left.
Yeah.
At that point, she's left. But let's try, right? Let's try to
Yes.
say, what can we do for our teams? Yeah, any thoughts about that?
For sure. I mean, the entire book is written to at the level of the manager or the project
Yeah.
leader. My theory of change in writing the book was not like, here's the organizational policies or the government policies that need shifting.
Right.
Even though I do that work as consulting, I felt like the most critical person and lever is the local team leader or project manager. Because for all practical purposes, like you're the CEO to the people around you, right? Like that
Mhm.
is your day
Mhm.
in, day out work bubble.
Right.
And so I'm always asking the question, like, how can you create a little corner of organizational sunlight, right? Even if it's stormy for the rest of the company, how can you
Yeah.
do that for your little group? Because it makes That's what makes all the difference. And I love that they tried to keep it fun because
Right.
actually, like, I've gotten so much amazing feedback from impact organizations on the book itself because people are burning out
Right.
in those jobs. And the goal is not to be so serious to create the impact. Like, the goal for these people is actually to stay in the game.
Mhm.
Like, we need people to stay in the game of these really, really hard roles. And you do that by enjoying your days and wanting to be there. So yeah, that sort of local level, um, God, I've got a million and one thoughts
I know.
on how to do that well.
But it's inspiring, right? And people can read the book to really get a fuller understanding of that. But I just the reason I even want to have that part of the conversation, Bree, is I feel like sometimes people are like, but you don't know my company. And that's
Yeah.
true. But a lot of us do know this company. It's just a different name, a different culture.
Yeah.
But I guess one guest told us every company sucks, right? Every company sucks. Your job is not to make it not suck, it's to make it suck less, right? And so you can make it suck less by at least how can we implement some of these ideas? And I don't know if people will say, well, I need to make a cozy team, but I love that it's just weird enough that it
Yeah.
gets your attention of what does it mean. So if I wanted to make my team a cozy team, like what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I mean, actually, exactly the situation that you're describing. Like, when you
Mhm.
think about coziness, I think of like winter time, right? There's a
Right.
blizzard outside, but you are inside feeling comfortable and warm and delighted even. Like, there's something I would say, like, even nice about the contrast between, oh, it's cold out there and it's
Mhm.
warm in here.
I
So
like that.
that's how I think about building a team. No matter what's happening in the rest of the organization or with customers or with clients, my goal in leading a team is always to create that feeling of coziness. Like, we together, we feel safe with each other, we feel comfortable with each other. There's even sort of that sense of like, oh, if something really goes wrong out in the world that affects our project, the first thing we want to do is put a debrief on the calendar, get together and talk about it because our instinct is to come tighter and cozier when the elements start brewing. So, this is all the things you might imagine of a team. They're like highly trusting, highly communicative, have each other's backs, and really like know how to do great work together, are super high performing in that way because they're highly attuned to each other as well. And I know, like, as the leader, as the project manager, like, I'm always thinking, like, who needs what? Who's a little bit down? Who needs more context? Who needs support? Like, who's running at something and actually needs us to get out of the way? Like, all those kinds of things. So it's that sort of like understanding who's in your cozy little hut and, who needs a blanket,
Yeah,
that sort
right.
of feeling.
Yeah. I know it's kind of hard to put in words, but like I had kind of pictures of when I'm feeling cozy, I suppose I'm unguarded. Like
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to flex. I'm not trying to prove, but we're just together. Right? We're interacting, and in this spirit back of that example of the DCFS example, it's like unguarded in it, but kind of guarded from the outside elements too. That's what we're trying
Yeah.
to create. Seems
Mhm.
like that. Yeah.
Sh
There's so many practical things in the book, of that people could use, and I guess this is asking you to give away some of the rituals just to give people a
All
taste.
good.
But I love the idea of the user manuals, the check-ins, and the fast food rule for one-on-ones. Would you mind just sharing, just even if it's just the elevator pitch for each of those, just to give them a
Yeah.
sense of how some of these can help us with our on a practical basis with our teams?
Yes. Okay, these are my 3 best, like, highway to cozy team tools.
Get you 80% of the way there, I think you said in the book, right?
That's right,
Yeah.
80% of the way there to a cozy team every time.
Yeah.
The user manual. So this is quite literally, it's a document, a shared document like Google Doc or something, where everybody gets a page, everybody on the team. And on your page, there are a series of questions, and you are going to answer the questions um, such that you are explaining to your colleagues how to quote unquote operate you. Right. Like, I mean,
Right, right.
this is
Yeah.
like sort of a cheeky term for
Yeah,
it.
right.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
mean that way, but
No, but yeah,
uh,
yeah.
right. Like, it's like you buy a blender and you're like, oh, there's all these buttons and they have these
Mhm.
symbols. Like, well, just read the guide, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a quick start guide. So why can't humans come with quick start guides? So a lot of the questions are, some basic facts about knowing each other, like who are the people or animals important to you in your life? always find it amazing. You can work with somebody for years and be like, wait, you have a brother?
Hmm.
Oh,
Right.
okay, right?
Right.
Like some of the basic facts. So there's some of that. There's some of, you would write down how I want help when I'm stressed or stuck. You can other questions like how I like to communicate, what's important to me on a team, what I don't have patience for, all of how I can be misunderstood is another. It's just a quick start guide to working with you. And what's great about it is just accelerates all the learning in a team of how to work with each other. Because, some people, when they're upset, they want you to be like, oh, are you okay? Do you want to talk it out? And other people are like, leave me alone.
Right.
And like, why guess? Why
Why
guess?
guess? Exactly.
Right? Like, just
Yeah.
write it down.
Yeah.
And so we would always do this at the kickoff of a new project. If you're interested, I actually have a template on my website. So Bree Groff /user manuals, you can go grab a template there. So that's that one, the user
Hmm.
manuals. Highly recommend for any team. Refresh it every year or at the kickoff to a project.
Yep.
The check-in is a daily or weekly ritual. And this is the highest impact to effort ratio thing I've ever done on a team. So it goes like this. At the start of if you have a stand-up meeting or like a weekly team meeting, you say, okay, how's everybody doing on a scale of 1 to 5? And this could be about work or about life. We're going to count down 3, 2, 1, and everybody puts it on their hands, just like we did. So Andy and I did this at the start
Before
of
we
the show.
start
It
recording,
was like
absolutely.
so fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you put up your hands, and then if I'm the leader or the PM, I will say like, okay, Andy, kick us off.
Yeah.
And then you go around in like 30 seconds each. You might
Yeah.
say, I'm a 4. I'm super excited about this next phase of our project, but I kind of like tweaked my back, so I might have to be camera off later. Or like, I'm a 3. We got a new puppy, but the puppy is up all night, so
Mm.
-2.
Yeah.
If you're just sharing anything, it's sort of like a little temperature check, and it's good for like a million reasons: psychological safety, thwarting misunderstandings, cognitive offloading, getting things off of your brain so that you can then attend to the task at hand. So that one I would do every day
Mm.
with a team, no more than once a day because that gets to be a little much. And the trick is doing it even when it feels awkward and you're like, should we
Mm.
just jump in because that's more professional? Like, no, I would always say, all right, sorry, team. I love a check in. And then people are like, yeah, we love a check in too.
Yeah.
So that's that one.
That's nice.
The third one, the fast food rule. So this is more of a communication technique that I stole from Dr. Harvey Karp, who's a child psychologist. And you would use this in one-on-one meetings, especially if you are the manager, like leader, or more senior person. So if someone tells you, like, I'm really worried about this upcoming meeting that we have, it might be your instinct to say, like, oh, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. Or like, yeah, I'm worried too. And here's the 10 things I'm worried about. But this technique, the fast food rule, teaches us to do something else. So imagine you going through a drive through and you pull up and you say, I'll have a burger, fries, and a shake. And the question is, what is the first thing the person says back to you? You might think, pull forward, that'll be $12. Would you like to
Right.
supersize that? But no, the first thing they say back is, okay, I've got a burger, fries, and a shake. The first thing they do is they make sure you are heard before anything else. And then you're ready to listen. So in a one-on-one setting, if someone's like, yeah, I'm really worried about this upcoming project, you say, okay, let me make sure I got this straight. The meeting that we have coming up on Friday, you're a little bit worried about that, about how that's going to go. Now, usually people will be like, yes, and I've been thinking about this, and they'll expand. But we have to make sure the other person is heard first, because people that don't feel heard are terrible listeners. They're just going to try and get their point across, right? If you start coming back at something. So that's just my best one-on-one trick
Yeah.
for establishing a sense of validation and connection. Like if you don't know what to say, you're like, oh God, I'm worried too. Just repeat it back.
Yeah. Free relationship advice. Where were you early in my marriage? Because if my wife was upset about it, oh, settle down. Like that's in the history of humankind. Did that ever help for to say settle down, or it's not that big of a deal? It's like just the
Right.
fast food rule. I just, you just want to hear back what you've said and if they go, that's right, then that you're actually listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
I This wasn't even a major point in your book, but I just appreciated you did make a point that your body is an instrument. And if we want to do brilliant work, we have
Hmm.
to take care of it. So what are some specific things you do to keep your instrument well tuned, so to speak? And the reason that I'm asking is my observation from reading your book is that you actually prioritize this, but it's not because you just have all this free time. And I
No.
think a lot of us are like, I want to do this, but sometimes people feel we don't have the ability to because of all the competing demands. So maybe you could
Yeah.
model this for us about.
Um, I think in losing my mom, my father's Alzheimer's too. Like it was a real sort of midlife wake up call to like,
Yeah.
oh right, my body's not infallible. Like my body
Right.
can break at some point. And so in some ways, it was like a light switch for me where I was like, oh, I'm prioritizing this now. And then I dug into a
Yeah.
lot of the research and exercise, blah, blah. So some of the things I do, um, I'm exercising. Well, last week was book launch week, so forget
Yeah.
that
Right.
week.
Yeah. Right.
But
Yeah.
usually I'm exercising
Most
4 or 5
things, most days, right?
most
So
things,
yeah.
most days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm exercising 4 or 5 times a week, strength training twice a week, because I've drank up all the research, especially on women and bone density and all those kinds
Right.
of things. I'm generally eating like whole foods. Um, I'm like gotten a little nerdy about supplements too, making sure my vitamin D levels are okay, all
Mm.
those things. So it's not, I mean, some of those things are easier than others. The exercising does take a lot of time. And the way that I do it, this is my trick for any sort of prioritization. I know that my calendar is the boss of me.
Mm.
Like when I wake up in the morning, I look at my Google Calendar and I say, okay, calendar, where am I going? What am I doing? So
Yeah.
I need to leverage that for good. So what I will do is I mean, quite literally what I do is I go to these dance classes that I love and I will sign up for them weeks in advance and put them on my calendar first. Now I have to go like a few weeks out because otherwise meetings will start coming in because it's
Right.
very hard. You can't like, I don't know, I can't cancel a meeting. Like, sorry, Andy, we can't do the podcast because I kind of
Yeah.
want to go exercise.
Right.
But it's but if I had something booked at 9 a.m. to exercise, I could say like, hey, Andy, could we do 11 a.m. instead? That's much easier. So that's one of my hacks for like whatever's important. Use your calendar for good and get there before work can get there. It's the better hack and better than having a midlife crisis
Yeah. Yeah.
about like your health and longevity.
For sure. I think you mentioned in the book sleep too, right? You prioritize sleep.
Yeah, I'm real nerdy about all this
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've got my like Whoop sleep tracker, and we've got one of those 8 beds that cools you down.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
a part of it is like, I've got a lot of A student energy in me, that I've always been
Yeah.
kind of the good student. And it's been helpful to reroute some of that energy to my health because it doesn't all have to go to work as it
Right.
has for me in the past. And so to get a sleep score really hijacks my reward centers in a very
Mhm.
healthy way.
Mhm. Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
use it for good. Why
Mhm.
not? Why not be
I like it.
excited to have a good sleep score?
I got to a point where I got a lab test back, and the doctor was like, "You're going to be a diabetic, just a matter of time,
Oh
unless you make some
God.
changes." And I'm like, "Okay, let's make some changes." And what I thought was interesting is the day before I wasn't ready to make changes. The day after, I made some changes, and he goes, "You're." The last checkup was like, "You're not at risk of it anymore," and
Oh my
it
God.
didn't take that much in the scheme of things. Change eating, change on the exercise, but it's not like I had to drop everything, and so it is interesting
Right.
how I like
Mm-hmm.
how you said that A student energy into that, and so make it not a burden, but it's like a delight. Like if I miss my morning walk now, if I miss going to the gym for and lift, I miss it. Like I look forward to it now, but it's that reframing it. Right?
Yes. I have found once I started doing it, when my body got used to eating healthy and exercising.
Mhm.
Now, like, don't be at first it was painful. I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
don't
Yeah.
painful, exercise is painful. But after a while, my body started to crave it. And like
Yep.
I didn't feel good.
Mhm.
And I was like, this is weird. All right, I've made it to the other side. But it's important. Like I think I realized at some point, like nobody's gonna care about my cholesterol like I do. Right.
Right.
Like I have to be the boss of my
Right.
cholesterol.
Yeah.
No, manager is going to be like, let me see your cholesterol report,
Hmm.
right? So,
Do you know, you also talk about do nothing days in the book, or to
mm,
me, it might be difficult sometimes to have a day of it, but I feel like my walk, I'm unplugged. Right? It's a
yes.
variation of that, whether it's on the bike or whatever, when you're in your dance class. Like it's a chance to unplug and I'm not strategizing or whatever, you know?
For sure. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm forgetting who it was. It was some film producer, maybe you know, who installed a shower in his office
No.
because he's like, well, look, I get my best ideas in the
Right.
shower.
Yeah.
So why don't we
Right.
take more
Yeah.
showers, right?
Yeah. Right.
Some
It's
like
funny.
Pixar
Right.
director or something like that. But
Totally
it's
makes
kind
sense.
of true. Like I would always joke, if I led another company, I would just put like shower twice a day. That's one of our values,
Hmm.
twice as
Hmm.
many good ideas.
Yeah. Right. And it's
Yeah,
not the water, right? It's the disconnecting. You can't take electronics in with you. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You share so many beautiful insights from Milton. Is it pronounced Glaser? Is it?
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah. For those who aren't familiar, I just love if you just introduce who he is and maybe one of your favorite things that you learned about him through your friend Sue.
Yeah. Okay. So Milton Glaser, um, I wish I had met him. He passed away in 2020. He was one of the world's best designers to ever live. Some of his accomplishments, so he had one-man shows at Museum of Modern Art in New York, Centre Pompidou in Paris, received a National Medal of Honor from Obama. Some of his work, probably his most famous work, is the I Heart New York, I Heart NY
Mm.
logo that he had done decades ago. He also co-founded New York Magazine, just like a prolific, brilliant designer. I was lucky enough. So my friend Sue, who I'd worked with for many years, one of my all-time favorite collaborators, who's also a designer, she was his art director, sort of like right-hand woman for many years. And so she would always tell me stories about Milton as we were working. And till I was like, Sue, I'm writing a book. Can I interview you about Milton? And so many of the stories have wound up in there.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite thing about Milton, so he worked in like almost up until his death. He was interviewed by the New York Times once at age 87. And they asked him, "Well, why do you still work at this age?" And he said, like, I want to do it to do good, but that's not really why I do it. I don't really do it to do good. I mean, that plus, I do it
Mm.
because it is so pleasurable for me. He said, nothing in my life, including sex, has ever given me the kind of satisfaction that working has, which is like a kind of a bold claim, I might
Sure.
say.
Yeah. It's provocative,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he is making an interesting point, isn't he? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and Sue would always tell me like Milton loved using the word pleasure. It's a pleasure, my pleasure, because I think that's really how he felt about work, that it was very pleasurable for him. And that it feels like I almost like twitch to say it, like pleasure and work. Like it just feels
Mm.
so
Hmm. Right.
incongruous in many
Right.
ways. But the fact that he was always enamored with the world, the fact that Sue would tell the story if she changed a color in a rug pattern and he was like, that's the most profound, beautiful like
Mhm.
he never lost his ability to be astonished. And I think that's why we've lost, in many ways, so much fun
Yeah.
from our work. Because that feeling of vitality, of astonishment, of sort of an unpredictability and optimism, it's, when I hear his stories, I just think, I just want to be him when I grow up.
Mm. Yeah.
I
Isn't that
really
beautiful to
do.
say? And because he liked being who he was when he was growing up. Like there was a
Hmm.
quote that I don't remember exactly how he said it, but I think it was when he was being interviewed. He said, if you can sustain your interest in what you're doing later in life, you're an extremely fortunate person. It was something like that. And I think that
Yeah.
once again, you don't drift to that. It's one of those things of trying to develop this well, I imagine if you're having fun, that does it. But I just want to keep learning and then make it
Yeah.
fun. And he modeled that. It's beautiful. Yeah.
He did. Yep.
So many things I'd love to talk with you about, but let's end with this. We have a lot of parents who listen to the podcast. And can you think of any ways that you and your husband, Brad, are intentionally applying some of these ideas, maybe from the book, actually in your family life?
Yeah. Gosh, like all the time. Just the notion, I hope I'm doing for Arden what my parents did for me. She sees me having a lot of fun at work. She's such a funny kid, but she's also been like my junior publicist whenever we go. It's like I don't know, we're ordering coffee and she's like, "My mom wrote a book. Do you want to have it at your coffee shop? You can order it here." So she sees how much fun I'm having, but she also sees, honestly, like I've cried a lot in the book publishing it's
Mm,
stressful and like, oh, what decision do I make? But that's not bad, I think. Like I also let her see what it is to care about work, to care about the people that I'm working with. And so my husband's a data scientist. Like she hears him be all nerdy about like his work and excited about that. So I try and make that infectious. On a day-to-day basis, she knows how to do a check-in. Like, how are you today? 1 to
okay.
5, right? Like that's such an easy tool to use with a family, especially if
Yeah.
you're not like lining up for dinner all together, things like that. And then now sometimes I would say maybe once or twice a week, I'll read with her in bed before she goes to sleep, and I read
Yeah.
every single page.
Yep. Beautiful. I love that. I
And
think
it's my favorite time.
I think the fast food rule applies even, right? So
Yes.
does my wife or do my kids feel like I'm listening or
Yes.
so
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, especially she's like a very chatty 10-year-old and she wants to tell us everything and she's very attuned to like you're not looking at me, you know. So just making her feel heard, I hope she'll
yeah.
never stop telling us all her stories.
Yeah. Well, for those listening, we have barely touched on what's available in Bree's book. If you'd like a refreshing, fun, thought-provoking guide to help you and your team have more good days like we've been talking about, get a copy of Bree's new book. Today Was Fun. I'll put links to the book and the book's website in the show notes for this cast. So, Bree, thank you for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.
It was so fun, Andy. Thank you.
A special thanks to Bree for joining us here on episode 478 of the People and Projects podcast. I'm going to guess you can probably tell I enjoyed that conversation. It's not only just a fun book, she's just a fun person to be able to interact with. I think she represented her book really well. I think the big message for us is there a way to make work better, more fun and more joyful? And maybe you look at your job and you think there's nothing fun or, we don't go to play, we go to work. And I just think it's good for us to be stretched and to think there's maybe another way to not only achieve the outcomes we want, but do so in a way that's not as painful. Because the benefits, I think, go far and above beyond just, haha, it was fun. I think we have probably had longer retention, right? That people stay longer. There's a good show at peopleandprojectspodcast.com. Whether it's from the book or today's discussion with Bree, I'd love to hear what resonated with you. If you'd like more on this topic, I put links in the show notes to episode 458 with Elizabeth Latardo. And she wrote a book about finding joy in the job that you have, which is a little bit like we talked about with Bree here, that, sure, you could run to another place, but, every place is messed up, right? Every place has its problems. What can you do with the group that you have? At least try to start there. That's episode 458. And then episode 333, it was with Bob Nelson and Mario Tamayo. And they had a book about just how to make work more fun. And it's just one of those books that is like 475 ways that's not the right number, but how to make work more fun. So I think you would find it as a great companion episode to this. And finally, going way back in the archives to episode 82 with a guy named Bill Catlett. And the name of the book was something crazy like Why Contented Cows make better milk or give better milk or something like that. And he's using that as a metaphor that if we have contented teams, you get better results. And so it's another angle on what Bree's talking about here. So if you want to go way back to episode 82, it's probably one maybe you haven't listened to. So check that out. I put links to all those in the show notes for this cast. If you have your PMP, I want to make sure you know that you can get continuing education credits, free PDUs, just by listening to the podcast. Okay? So just go to peopleandprojectspodcast.com/free PDUs to learn how to report these. Everything you need to know is right there. And if you don't have your PMP, or if you know someone who's thinking about doing it and they'd like to have some support on that, make sure you go to 5bestresources.peopleandprojectspodcast.com. We put together what we call the 5 best resources to pass your PMP on your first try. We've gotten great feedback from that. So that link is in the show notes as well. I just want to say thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I can't tell you how much the team just gets fired up when we get emails from people between LinkedIn comments and emails that we get from listeners. It's almost every day, and it just means so much to us. So thank you for your support. For many of you over the years, really, we genuinely appreciate it. And I hope you have yourself a great week.